You know, on the road, there's army everywhere because the roads are like they're only strong.
Do you find it difficult?
Everybody has a gun. Your grandfather has a gun. Your dad has a gun. You have a gun. It doesn't feel real anymore. What on earth am I doing here?
How are you received there?
Now, are you doing this to all journalists? Because, this is not a good look for your country. Either you get on the next plane back to the Netherlands or we throw you in jail. Nobody's writing about this.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Lack of Coverage podcast, where I'll be interviewing a journalist from every single country in the world. To kick stuff off for episode 1, we're starting with the Netherlands. A couple weeks ago, I sat down with Vera, a Dutch journalist who back in 2024 became the first journalist in the entire world to spend time with the Fano rebel group in Ethiopia. Simon's expertise are in East Africa, and he spent his time travelling around the region, writing on issues such as conflict, climate change, and human rights. So, without further ado, let's get into the interview, and welcome to the Lack of Coverage podcast. Simon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
First guest.
Glad to be here.
So, firstly, I just wanted to get into your childhood experiences and how that inspired or impacted your choice to go into journalism. So, tell me a bit about that. Was journalism something you always wanted to go into?
Writing was always something I wanted to do. Not necessarily journalism, but the older I got, the more I found out that was kind of a cool thing to do. I guess from a young age, I was always, politically inclined to demonstrate and protest and whatnot. Okay. And, at some point I was like, I can stand on the streets, but I can also go somewhere and inform people, make that my kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And, the topic of Africa came later, much later actually. When I was 19, my parents moved to South Africa for 4 years, so I was there a lot. And that's kind of when the whole ball started rolling and, being interested in Africa, making that kind of my area of expertise.
So before it wasn't kind of Africa focused, it was more like a general interest?
Yeah, general interest. I mean, I've always had a focus on some of the topics I do, like human rights, climate change, that kind of stuff I've always found important. And I was able to kind of weave that in later into the area.
Okay, awesome. And so your parents moved to Africa when you were 19, to South Africa. You were living here at that time?
Yeah, I was living here, but I was going there twice a year. So I spent like 1 or 2 months a year there because I was in uni, so we had a lot of holidays. And then through my uni, I met some friends from Mozambique, from Tanzania, kind of became, so I went there on holiday as well, visited my friends. So kind of started moving around in like southern East Africa kind of in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And at uni, you were studying African studies, right?
Yeah. So first, when my parents were living there, I started this course called Liberal Arts and Sciences. So very broad kind of stuff. A couple of years later, I switched to African studies. Yeah.
Okay. And that was because your parents had
because by that point, I was like, I wanted to be a journalist before, but at that point, I knew where I wanted to be doing it, what I wanted to do. So I made the choice. They say in the Netherlands, they say as a joke, kind of, if you want to be a journalist, don't study journalism.
Uh-huh.
So
also in the UK.
So
sometimes.
I took that to heart, and then I made it my goal to just learn about the area, the topics before I went there, instead of going there and then having to learn everything first. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it can take a while.
Yeah, and so while you're at uni, you get an internship at, I'm going to maybe butcher the Dutch pronunciation, Trouw.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's
pretty good. Means true?
Yeah, trust, truth.
Yeah,
it's an old World War II resistance paper. That's where it comes from.
Okay, and it's an international paper, right? Reports on international issues.
Yeah, they are. They are, I'd say, like mid-level in the Netherlands. They're not big, but they're big enough to have their own reporters on site.
And so what are you doing there while you're at Trouw?
So I went to the foreign desk, and I guess I had a bit of luck because at the moment they had some reshuffling of personnel, and then the guy who was writing about Africa, he became the foreign desk editor in charge for just a couple months, but that was exactly the months I was there. So I kind of took over Africa. Mm-hmm. I had to learn everything. I had no idea how to write as a journalist, but I knew something about Africa. So that was good enough to kind of move in there and learn the trade.
And so you're writing basically about Africa then, kind of by default because of your knowledge or your studies?
Yeah, exactly. It kind of opened up and I was there. So just naturally they kind of shifted like, oh, this is something happening there. Do you know something about it? It's like, yeah, I know something about it. And then, all right, you can write about that.
And what are the first or the like main stories that you're working on there?
So, of course, there's a lot of small stuff, but I guess one about Ethiopia was quite big. And Sudan was just starting the war, so I was writing about Sudan as well a lot.
Yeah, so I read some of your work from that time, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the first pieces that you published was about Ethiopia and the Fano rebels.
Yeah, definitely the first big one I wrote,
Yeah.
the like full page one. Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of important for your future because you go on after you leave trial to be the first journalist in the world to go and spend time with the Fano rebel group.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's kind of, I guess not specific to journalism, but just specific to any job. You kind of get, well, I don't want to say lucky because the situation was quite horrible there. So luck might not be the right word, but you meet the right people. And I met the right people um, through one of my bosses, actually, who had written about it before. Not necessarily in a rebel kind of sense, but about the Amharans, like this ethnical group where the rebels are based in. So he knew in contact. He gave it to me. I talked to this guy, and then later on, I felt, nobody's writing about this. Why don't I try to go there? Because I had at that point kind of a little plus because I was unknown. Nobody knew me. So if you go somewhere, if you do something like this where you have to travel through, government areas to report on a group fighting against the government, you don't want the government to know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Because they won't let you go there. So it was kind of, the timing was good for me. Like I had the context. I was unknown enough to kind of move my way as a tourist in there, and so it happened.
Yeah. So, for example, I didn't know about the Fano rebels before I read your piece or before reading up on it and stuff. And I think that's quite common. I guess as someone who does journalism myself, like know quite a lot about like different resistance movements, rebel groups, for example. But I'd never heard of Fano before. Why do you think it is that like this is a story that no one's hearing about? And actually, even before that, who are Fano? What do they do?
So the Fano, there's a long history in Ethiopia with militias. They kind of say, everybody has a gun. It's your grandfather has a gun, your dad has a gun, you have a gun, like these old hunting guns usually. So sort of armed resistant, guerrilla resistant has been there for a long time. When they were fighting the Italians, it was, local guerrilla militia doing that. So there's a long history of this. But then at some point, I guess to make it really condensed and short, Ethiopia has a sort of federal system where every region has their own government and also their own armed forces. Uh, I think it was 2021 or 2022, not sure about the year, but the Tigray war started. Tigrayans went into Ethiopia, like into the south. The government asked these local militia and these Amhara national forces or regional forces to help the national army to fight against the Tigrayans. So they became very well trained, got the best guns, all this kind of stuff. Then once they signed a peace treaty, the Amharans felt they weren't involved and they started rebelling themselves. And so the people who were fighting for the government against the Tigrayans, they now formed their own more organized and professional militias, which are the Fano.
So they were armed by the government.
They were armed by the government, yeah.
Okay, and then rebelled.
But they were much smaller. And by now, something which is, I find, like, I'm very interested in these subversive movements. Like, why does someone get a gun and give up their life? That's something you really saw at the Fano. You see students, lawyers from like all parts of society just giving up their lives. They go into the bush and get a gun and start fighting the government, which you don't do that lightly.
So why are they in this situation?
So yeah, it's difficult to say. According to themselves, a genocide is happening against the Amharans.
Okay.
But genocide is used as an argument in many contexts. Sometimes rightfully, sometimes not. I don't. It's not my job as a journalist at this point to say are they right or not. but I went there to show why they do say that. And they have some points. Schools are being bombed by the government. Hospitals are being bombed by the government. These kind of things are happening, and so they really feel that their culture and their cultural group is deliberately being exterminated by the national government. That's kind of the idea they have.
So on you actually going to visit and write your piece. So you get this contact from your internship, who is like not who they are, but like what is this contact for?
Yeah, so it was a member of an Amharic lobby group. Like a lot of, because of course, I mean, Africa as a whole is culturally enormously diverse.
Yeah.
And a lot of these cultural groups have a big diaspora, and these diasporas very often create lobby groups. So the Amharians have one as well. It's in the US, based there. And they had the contacts within the Fano leadership, to arrange this visit for me. So I was talking to them, like, I want to do this. Is it possible? They said, yes, it's possible. I just had to get there, and then they would get in touch with the leadership, and could just go, and I would be picked up, and so it happened. So I flew to Addis Ababa first, then from there to Bahir Dar, which is like a local regional city. I stayed a couple days there, interviewed some people within town. Then I took just a minivan out, into the rural areas, and you pass like checkpoint.
Yeah.
But they pretty much were thinking like, it's a white guy. He's not a member of the militia, which fair enough. But they didn't check anything else. Luckily for me.
Because the journalists are banned from going there.
Yeah, very much so.
So what did they think you were doing?
I was just saying I'm a tourist. Like, even though it's an area with a lot of violence, there's still tourism. Because you kind of find these checkpoints where there's some government ones, and at some point it changes to rebel checkpoints, but you can still pass through. And a lot of people kind of do tourism, and then they fly from city to city to avoid that. Some people do it like this. So I just said I'm a tourist. I didn't really ask anything else, to be honest. It was easier than expected. And so at some point I got off from the main road. We get a tuk-tuk. We drive for like 45 minutes, really into like a rural town. And at some point there's a river and a bridge, and we cross it, and then we're in Fano territory. At first these guys didn't know what was happening. They were like, what are you doing here? We explained it to them. Got to the town. We called our guy. We got picked up and brought to like one of the regional leaders of the Fano.
So I guess you're a bit scared in that moment of the potentiality of the government finding out what you're going to do, because surely the repercussions for that can be quite bad, right?
Yeah, no, it was definitely. I mean, on the way there, it wasn't so bad because I didn't have anything. I didn't have any photos or nothing, so I could,
Yeah, sure.
It's hard for them to prove anything. On the way back, I was a bit more scared. I remember this one point, we got back to the main road, and we're waiting for a minivan to take us back into the city, into Bahir Dar. And on the road there's army everywhere, because the roads are like their only strongholds. These asphalt roads is kind of where the army stays, and then the biggest cities. Everything else in between is Fano. And we're just standing there, and then this soldier is like pointing to me, like, come to me.
Really?
So I was scared shitless. What does he want? What is he gonna ask? But he was just, oh, where are you from? Netherlands. Robin van Persie, Ruud van Nistelrooy.
Really?
And that was it. So he just wanted to talk to me about where I was from. So it was a bit of a scare, but nothing serious. And to be honest, it was much easier than I anticipated.
And what about the, like, in terms of fear of going to rebel territory? Did you fear for your like safety in that point as well? Because
no, I didn't fear for my safety. It's at some point. I mean, it was my first time doing it, so in the beginning, like the first hour I was there, I was thinking like, what on earth am I doing here? Because there was this moment I remember very vividly. I was walking with the main guys, and we have like all the security around us. We were walking in town, and there were prisoners of war, government soldiers. So we're on the square because they were doing something to the government soldiers, like saluting them, greeting them. And I'm standing there with them, and I see like everybody's taking videos of me, photos of me. So I tell this rebel leader, everybody's taking a photo of me, but if they put it on Facebook, I'll be screwed, like at least don't do it until I leave the country. So he's like, okay, no problem, come with me. So we walk around the corner. He says, wait here a couple minutes. He walks back. A couple minutes later, he comes back, comes to get me again. He's like, problem has been solved. That for the rest of the week, nobody took any
Took any
photos.
photos, really?
Yeah. So that was a bit of a realization moment. I was like, this is some serious stuff. These guys. They have the respect and I don't know the fear. I think more respect of the community.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting.
And as you're going there on the way to the Fano territory, like, am I correct in saying that like a few hours before the village was hit by a drone strike?
So no, so there wasn't while I was going there. That was when I was leaving, actually.
When you were leaving?
Yeah. So I mean, drone strikes had been happening in the days before, but the last day I was interviewing this rebel leader for like the big interview. I was doing like an hour and a half or something, and we were just sitting in this beautiful meadow, like a little creek. It was really beautiful, serene territory.
Just like we have for our interview here.
Exactly, that kind of stuff. And so one of his guys comes to him and he like whispers something in his ear, and he's like, "Oh, like a town just 10 minutes away, like drone has hit." So we wrapped up the interview real quick, did like one more question, 5 minutes. We got in the car, we drove, we got like close to town, and then we left the car under some trees because like maybe there's still people watching from above, so we got to be a bit careful. We walked there, and by that point, like the victims had been taken away, but there was still like some dead animals lying in on this square, and
But there were human casualties.
there
right?
were human. Yeah, so this was like also this like sound that I still remember very vividly, where this town was deserted, like nobody was on the streets, and you heard like wailing families like around. You heard these cries, so we walked
that's
to them.
awful.
We went to watch. Couldn't really interview anyone because it was so fresh and they were very traumatized, obviously. So we didn't talk to anyone. And then somewhere else, you heard like gunshots from like them celebrating their fallen member. This
Like as a martyr almost.
yeah, kind of, but it like because that's also so difficult in this situation. Like the line between civilian and militia member is very blurred gray area. So like kind of everybody would be a militia member because if people come, they will pick up their guns and they will start fighting, but they're not actually members of the militia.
Okay.
So it's kind of a gray area. And then we went to this makeshift clinic because they didn't go into the real clinic because they were afraid that it would also be hit by a drone. So they went to another like shed. There was some like a couple members there that are like really badly hurt. Of course, no real medical equipment there for them to do like serious stuff. So yeah, experienced that. It was it was good to experience. I mean, would be better if it didn't happen, but for the story in the end, it was good because it gave me a way of really making it very vividly sort of obvious what was happening to the people reading it. So
Yeah.
in that sense, it was good that I experienced it, but obviously it was, I think like 4 people died, 5 people died, something like this. So it was not a good moment for that town.
And kids as well.
Yeah, like I think two like under 12 or 11. So pretty bad stuff.
And so being there as a journalist, you're seeing these people maybe not dying, but just before they die or with serious injuries, right?
Yeah, so yeah, there was one woman that I remembered. She was there, her parents were there, so we asked the parents, can we take photos of her? And they said, yeah, you can take photos. It's this photo where she looks very like intensely in the lens, so it's already like quite, and there's bandages and blood. So it's already quite an intense photo. And then the day after, I asked, my contacts there, like how are these wounded? And they said like, yeah, that woman has passed away. So that's a rough photo, but that's the name of the game. That's you're there to write about this stuff happening.
Do you find it difficult to like detach the emotional side?
Yeah, I mean, it is
suffering.
it is weird. Like once you're behind the lens and you have a camera, like you feel so detached. It doesn't feel real anymore. And I think I'm built quite sober. Like I haven't had any problems with that kind of stuff so far. Who knows? But yeah, it's weird to having to detach and to be like really calm and kind of emotionless while people are like suffering so much, right? Because you have to keep a clear head. And it's like like when somebody starts crying, you kind of want to you want to give them a hug or something, but you got to keep on asking because Now you get to the emotion that makes a story vivid, that makes a story rememberable. Somebody that will read that will, maybe forget what is happening in Ethiopia, but they might remember the story of this woman that had such and
Yeah.
so happening to her. So you got to keep on going in that sense. But yeah, it's, I think, I mean, everybody experiences it differently. You hear these stories of like older journalists committing suicide because they've seen too many bad things.
There's a guy who took the photo, right? The journalist that took the photo of I think it was a girl with the vulture.
Yeah,
looking over,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
I think he committed
Yeah, I
suicide.
think so.
Yeah.
So definitely, some people can't handle it, some people can. But it's, yeah, if you work in areas like this, you gotta do it. You cannot not do it, I think.
And yeah, just on I guess one of the last things about the Fano is how are you received there by them as like an outsider?
Very openly, because I was the first one there. Like, all they wanted was just the world to hear their story. That's all they wanted to happen. So I pretty much had free access for a week. Like, sometimes I would join one of the groups on like a patrol or something like this. Sometimes I would just be walking around town and interviewing everybody, but I had complete openness. There was a guy from an NGO in Bahir Dar who was with me, so he was translating for me because I do not speak any Amharic, and most of them weren't speaking any English. But yeah, no, very openly, and it's kind of weird because I always say, when I was there, all I was doing was eating and drinking because I was with one of the main guys. So we would go into a town and somebody would butcher a goat or a sheep.
Oh, really?
And we got fed. And in Ethiopia, you drink with lunch, after lunch, before lunch. So
Drinking.
yeah, like you
Okay.
have like sort of like a berry kind of 3-4% drink, and then you have a proper booze liquor that
Okay.
they sip. So like half of what I was doing was just eating and drinking, which is weird.
Yeah.
It's but that's just the way their culture is. If somebody like a rebel leader comes, you feed them, you do everything. Um, so you can't say no either. That would be a big diss to them. So yeah, it was weird sometimes. I remember this one farmer we went to honor him because he was a rich farmer and he had bought some guns from Sudan. He brought guns for the Amharans,
Okay.
like proper like big anti
Does that
car
happen
guns.
quite a lot?
Yeah, it's like
Sudan,
it's a smuggling route across the border. A very porous border. You got the war in Sudan, so it's easy to get guns. So we went there, to you have to because you thank him. Like all the guys come. He feeds us. It's like 50 people. He feeds us all. At some point, he brings out a Johnny Walker Blue Label. Um, and like after a couple drinks, I had to be like, okay, no more, because otherwise I'll be like the only drunk one here. So I had to take care of that because he just wanted to feed me booze as much as he could.
They're just getting started. You're smashed.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, all right, no more, my friend. Thank you very much, but we have to quit now. Yeah.
And then, so after you spend the time there and you leave, this was 2024, right?
Yeah.
So what's happening at the moment with Fano?
They have been controlling more areas. It's a bit difficult to say because it's, there's no neutral kind of observers here. It's either the government saying this or the Fano saying that.
Are there any other journalists that have gone in since?
They have a couple, like a colleague of mine, a French guy, photographer, very good photographer. He went after me. A couple Ethiopian people went there as well. As far as I know, that's it until now. But don't quote me on that. Might be wrong. But yeah, people have. I mean, pretty much the whole of the countryside of Amhara is controlled by Fano,
Okay.
including some towns and the big cities, and some of the major roads are controlled by the army. Kind of a stalemate. Army, the army can't stop the Fano because they're just in the bush, in the forest, in the hills. It's impossible to really get a big force in there, and then it's also impossible for the Fano to conquer Addis Ababa, which they say they want.
So what's the end goal for both sides?
So for now, it's a stalemate. Kind of, I guess the army wants to just keep it contained enough.
Yeah.
But like an interesting thing that's happening is that the Fano areas, they don't have internet. The government turned that off, but they still have electricity. Like the national electricity company has not cut off electricity to Fano areas. So there is kind of an understanding, a stalemate. Well, yeah, we'll see. So until now, it's just the government doing drone strikes because that's achievable.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens in the future. Yeah.
And for you, going to Ethiopia again now that you've been there, possible?
It's gonna be difficult. Yeah, no, I really want to go back to Amara territory, but the only external border they have is Sudan,
Yeah.
and so that's gonna be difficult. Um, there are talks, but unconfirmed talks, that they are buying weapons now from the Eritreans,
Okay.
because Eritrea has supported subversive groups before in Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it will be possible to go from Eritrea to Amhara, but you have to pass Tigray, so it's difficult. I am still in contact with people there to see if maybe something opens up to go back, but I don't think I can fly through Addis Ababa anymore.
Yeah. Probably not.
It'll be difficult.
So other than your time in Ethiopia, you're also spending time around 2024, right? And since in East Africa, Tanzania, I think that you were in initially.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what are you doing in Tanzania this time?
Well, I mean, actually, I have never done like proper work. I've done a little bit of work when I was very young in Tanzania, when I was like at the end of uni. But I was mainly living there for uni.
As an exchange, right?
Yeah, as an exchange. And then I wanted to do proper reporting last year, but then I wasn't allowed in the country.
Okay.
So no more Tanzania.
Tell us about why you're not allowed in.
Yeah, so I wrote something actually on my first internship at Trau about the political situation in Tanzania, how their president came in as a reformer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she came in because the original president died. She was vice president.
Mm-hmm.
She came in as a reformer, and then she kind of went the old way of harassing anybody who didn't like what she did.
Okay.
And I wrote about that, and they found out, and then I tried to get in, and they took me in. I tried to fly in. They took me in, spend a night in some random office while being interrogated. I mean, interrogating is a bit of a big word. Questioned.
Okay.
Fits the bill better. And then they sent me back. Send me back. They told me I had to buy a plane ticket, which was a bit annoying. So I sent myself back in the end. Yeah.
So you wrote something that was anti the government?
Anti-government, and I think maybe what they took issue in the most is I interviewed this Tanzanian human rights lawyer for it as a source. Very short, like 5-minute phone call. It was like just for some quotes. And that guy is now on trial for treason in Tanzania. Okay. So they probably thought I was gonna go into his trial, because a couple days later,
he was having a trial.
Yeah, so the trial was ongoing, and a couple days later, it's like something would be happening in his trial. I don't remember what it was exactly, but one of the hearings.
Yeah.
So I think that they thought that I was gonna go there,
okay,
and write about that, which I wasn't. I was just there to visit my friends. But yeah.
Okay, so what about, because this was after Fano?
Yeah, correct? A couple years later.
Did they know about Fano?
Yeah. So not at first, but when they were questioning me, they were going through my whole history and looking at my LinkedIn and my Facebook, and they wanted to know everything.
How do you think they found out? Just they saw your, because do you need a visa to go to Tanzania?
Yeah, no. So I think I made a mistake.
Okay.
By earlier that year, I went by the Tanzanian embassy in the Netherlands to ask about the possibilities of living there as a freelance journalist. Like, can I get a residence permit? I think once I asked that, they probably started looking into me, and maybe then I became a bit of a persona non grata.
So you arrive, fly in, take in, you say questioned is the correct word rather than interrogated. What do you mean by that? Were they soft on you?
Yeah, like they weren't mean, you know. Like sometimes they would get mean, but they were never threatening. I mean,
they saw you as a threat, though.
Yeah, they did, but they told me, like, you are lucky that you're not Tanzanian, because then you would have been talking to the army. I don't know who I talked to exactly. They wouldn't tell me. But the president at that point had a bit, like, her son-in-law, I think, or her son, but I think her son-in-law had a sort of a little private security thing going for the elections. It might have been them. I'm not sure. But they like yeah they there was three guys. They weren't being too mean. Sometimes when I didn't want to answer a question, they would like get a bit angry. But apart from that, like we were laughing as well, you know. Like sometimes, you know, one of them went out because he had to ask his superior something, and then the other two guys we would just be laughing and joking about stuff. So it wasn't scary. It was just
Yeah.
heavily annoying.
Laughing at you saying you're getting deported.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it was like I was also telling them like, you know, are you doing this to all journalists? Because you know this is not a good look for your country. Like, no, we don't do this to all journalists. We do this only to you.
Only to the big shots.
Well, not so much there, but yeah, no, it was weird because by the time they sent me back, like when they took me in first, they were like, "Oh, you're on a list," you know, blah blah blah. Um, by the time they sent me back, they're like, "What list? We don't know about any list. We just because I came there without a plane ticket back, which technically isn't allowed. But
Okay.
this was my fourth time in Tanzania, and the first three times I was without a plane
Yeah.
ticket back, so it was never a problem. But in the end, they made that their reason.
Okay.
They were like, "Yeah, sorry, you."
If you didn't, am I right to say that they gave you an ultimatum, right? About like that you have to leave?
Oh
or-
yeah, they were like, either you get on the next plane back to the Netherlands, or we throw you in jail, and we're gonna bring you back to the airport until you leave. And the only ticket back was a KLM flight of €1,000, so that was a big ouch.
Okay.
Yeah,
So no more Tanzania.
not for now. We'll try again at a later point, but for now, no more Tanzania.
So Tanzania was your plan, right? Like
Yeah.
you said, you even went to the embassy here to ask about a visa for a freelance journalist. So it seems like you were planning to kind of settle there a little bit more. You come back to the Netherlands. This is what, last summer, 2025?
Yeah, this was in May or June 2025.
Okay. And then I guess you have to rethink your plans a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I already had plans for after Tanzania, so I kind of started there again. Was back in the Netherlands for a couple months. Then I moved to, well, I didn't move anywhere. I was like, because okay, Tanzania was not possible anymore. The the logical alternative was Kenya, Nairobi, but I didn't really know Kenya very well or Nairobi, so I didn't want to just go there and start living there. So I kind of took my backpack and started traveling around. Did a month in Malawi, a month in Zambia, then a month in Kenya, then a month in Uganda, then a couple more months in Kenya, just to make sure that it was actually the place I wanted to live in. And yeah, now I'm going back in next month, and I'll start living in Kenya, at least for short term, because won't have a residence permit yet, so I'm not gonna be like fully living there. But I leave all the time, so I could just get in and get out.
Yeah. So you say you're like roaming around for what, multiple different countries.
Yeah.
So are you like following stories, or do you go with a set idea of countries, then find stories there, or are you quite like reactive in the sense, oh, I'm here, there's a story happening here, let's go?
It's a bit of both. I do like I'm always continuously researching stuff. So when I go to a country, especially as a freelancer, you know, like all the costs are for yourself. So going to a country for one story usually doesn't make up for what you spend there. So I have a whole database of things I find interesting that are not, you know, time sensitive or not very time sensitive. So then when I go somewhere for a story that is time sensitive, I can also do a couple other stories, and then I make enough to actually make a living. But yeah, it depends. Sometimes things happen. Like as a freelancer, you have a bit more lenient. Like I don't need to do something this week. I can, you know, like for instance in Zambia, I wrote about a mining disaster that happened like 7 months earlier, but I can still go there, make a longer 2,000 word or something piece, make it a bit more, you know, about background info, about all that kind of stuff. So I don't really need to be there when it happens. I can come a bit later.
Yeah, because the effects are still there, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then, so as a freelancer, during your internship, I know it wasn't like a full-time job, but you're, you know, at this one publication writing for them. As a freelancer, obviously, you have to pitch your stories, and you're picking up work with, you know, different publications, getting published in different publications. So what's that like? Do you have to pitch first, then write the story, or do you come to them and say, I have a story here?
Yeah. I mean,
Do you want it?
it's a good question. It really depends. In the beginning, the first year or something that I worked, I pitched everything because you don't really know them, they don't know you. Um, Sometimes, and like a lot of times, they gave you a caveat like, "Yes, we like the idea, but we want to see what it's like first."
Okay.
Now, after a few years, I know them, they know me. So I still try to pitch just because it gives a bit more financial security knowing that I can sell it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I go there, I know, like, let's say, for instance, I'm planning to go to Sudan. Um, it's difficult to know exactly what you're going to do there. I have my plans, but it's a war zone. Things can go differently. You're not sure you can make the story you want to make. So I know which publications care about certain things, what kind of topics they like, that kind of stuff. So for Sudan, I'm just gonna go there. I'm gonna write as many stories as I can, the ones I like, and then I'll send them out. Especially if you do something like that, like Sudan, where not many journalists go because they keep a tight lid on it, or Ethiopia, where you're one of the first. You can sell your stories, so there's not that much of a need for a pitch and to have that settled down beforehand. But most of the time, I do send out pitches. Yeah.
Okay. Sudan, you're gonna go to this year, hopefully.
Yeah. So once they apply or my visa application goes through, so waiting for the green light.
And I guess you'll be, yeah, as you said, one of few journalists.
Yeah, not too many people. 'Cause also, it's so expensive to work there. Like I'm going together with someone else to split the cost a bit.
Why is it so expensive?
Because it's a war zone. Like you got to work with translators and fixers. I mean, unless you speak Arabic, of course. But I don't speak any Arabic. Um, and for them, there's also a high risk. So hiring someone as a fixer slash translator quickly goes to $200-300 a day.
Yeah. So how are you actually finding these people to be? Or
Via. I mean, it's kind of what we do as journalists, right? It's like try and find contacts.
big networking
Big,
operation.
yeah, networking operation indeed. Yeah, I mean, I just knew some journalists from Sudan who've worked there, and then asked them, and then via you get someone who's a local journalist usually. So yeah, that's expensive. Then it's a place of scarcity, so petrol is expensive, so moving around is expensive. So, like for instance, I know two journalists who went there together. One did TV, one did writing, and I believe they spent about $10,000 euros, actually €10,000 for their stories. So yeah,
So is it not something that is you can possibly lose money on, right? If you're going to,
I can. It is, if you do something like that, it's always a risk. You're not sure you will make back your money or make a profit. But I have quite a strict, like personal budget. Like I know if I go over that, the chances are small that I will make back my money. So it will have to be maybe a shorter visit than I'd like.
yeah.
Maybe I could only spend a week, 10 days. I don't know. Even though you'd like to be there for weeks on weeks. So yeah, you have to work within the margins that you have.
Yeah, and it's like a upfront cost, I guess, that you're
Yeah, exactly.
paying
Like
before and
yeah,
which can make it stressful.
yeah. Because for stories like this, media can be willing to spend a bit extra on your costs. But yeah, you only get that afterwards, so you definitely have to do it first. Yeah.
And you're not so yeah, Sudan war zone, as we know, probably one of the most dangerous places in the world right now. Yeah, well, what's your thoughts going there in terms of is it something that you fear going to a war zone or
No, because I mean, I guess in anything that people do, you gotta be and try and not be an idiot like that first. Minimize the risks. Of course, there's always there's always a risk that a bomb falls on your head. But like we're not gonna go to the front line where the RSF is bombing SAF and vice versa. Like we'll go to Khartoum, which is relatively safe at the moment. If it's still safe when we want to go there, we'll have to see. We want to go to towns that have been recently liberated of the RSF. If we have the time and the money to do so, because that's the only real chance you have of getting an image of what the RSF is doing without going into their own territory. So yeah, it's always calculated risk. It's always being there, looking at the situation. Should we do this? Should we not do this? A fixer slash translator also doesn't want to lose their lives, so they also have a say. They might also say like, I'm not gonna go there.
If you want to go somewhere and a fixer doesn't want to go there, then what do you find another fixer?
Yeah,
or you just
we
like,
gotta find another way of doing something.
okay.
I mean, it will be my first time in Sudan, so I don't have a very good idea of how it will go. But in other countries that I do know, like for instance, I just use a taxi driver because they know a city very well, and you just pay them for a full day, and they know the language, they know the place they're at. So I work that way, so I don't really need to have a fixer. Kind of depends where you're working.
Yeah. And I've spoken a lot in this podcast about rebel groups. We've now gone a little bit into conflict and upcoming plans. But I guess we've covered a little bit less is the other areas that you specialize in alongside things like human rights, which also ties into human rights, is like the climate conservation and the environment. You've done quite a lot of work recently on that, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And what kind of stories are you, or have you worked on?
So I guess what I just said, like this mining operation, like the mining disaster in Zambia, was a big one. A conservation effort, like an elephant relocation in Malawi and Zambia, that was also a big one.
Yeah, that was a really interesting story, actually. If you could talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. No, it was. I mean, I was definitely not the first one to go there. But that is a benefit of being Dutch. Is I can be the first Dutch person going there, and that's enough.
First person writing in Dutch.
Yeah, exactly. So I found out about this through local media, like through Malawian and South African media who were writing about it. So basically, in a nutshell, 263 elephants got moved within the country. No precautions were taken. Elephants left the area they were supposed to be in, started eating the crops of the people, came in contact with them, violence, death, destroyed property, all these things. So yeah, it was super interesting to write that. And I mean, these are areas I'm interested in because there is such a weird. Well, it's not weird. It's kind of media based, but there's a very wrong perception in most countries of what Africa is. Like if you Google Africa, just like Google Africa, like one of the first pictures you get is the savannah, empty savannah with a nice little tree or whatever, or maybe a giraffe or an elephant.
Yeah.
A lot of people think of Africa that way. And so that's what I think is interesting in conservation is that people don't take into the equation the people that live there.
Yeah, sure.
Like, in the Netherlands and many Northern European countries, we're talking about killing like wolves because they're eating a couple sheep. And there's 10 wolves, maybe or 20 wolves in the country, and we want to kill them because economically, it's not doing anything well. But we don't really pay any attention to elephants, lions, rhinos, hippos killing hundreds of people a year in Africa because we like to go there and watch these animals. So there's a bit of a discrepancy between the reality on the ground and how people kind of envision it is. So it's a very interesting thing to write about as a journalist, to kind of unravel that and try to show what it is like doing conservation and stuff like this.
Yeah, and I guess it's also that balance of the coexistence between humans and animals.
Yeah, I think we all grew up with the idea that poaching is like the number one issue in conservation and like anywhere, especially Africa.
Certainly in Africa.
Yeah, we all know like the elephants with their tusks, getting shot, this kind of stuff. But in large parts of Africa, specifically southern and eastern Africa, poaching is not the number one problem anymore, but it's human-wildlife conflict.
Okay.
That's what kills most animals, and obviously most humans. People don't really realize that, and it's difficult. Like Africa, like any continent, population is growing massively. Nature is getting lost, and it's just getting closer and closer to a lot of friction. And it's happening all the time. And so this was a very good example of what happens when you don't think through, relocation through. There's a lot of criticism of the agencies and NGOs involved in this sense, because there are a lot of examples where these NGOs and agencies do it well, but what they do well in other places they didn't do well or didn't do at all here. So. And they need to be kept accountable, like these are organizations that have millions of donors, people giving them money. So it's only fair that these people know when these organizations mess up as well.
And yeah, aside from the conservation stuff, also climate change having a impact across the world, as we know, but especially in Africa. In your experience, why is that?
Um, there's a couple of reasons I think. First of all, it's just kind of bad luck, especially like East Africa
Yeah,
is in an area where it might not get much warmer, but because of like a, it's difficult to explain, but La Nina, El Nino also has an effect in the Indian Ocean. Like it has their own thing, and that's getting more and more
for sorry,
intense.
just for
Yeah.
people that don't know, what's that?
So El
La
Nino, La
Nina, El
Nina
Nino.
is a fluctuation in ocean temperatures, which changes the way the wind goes and which changes the way the rain goes. So
Yeah.
the west of South America is usually dry. If this happens, it suddenly becomes very wet. You have something called the Indian Ocean dipole in the Indian Ocean, which is pretty much the same thing, and it happens when El Nino or La Nina happens as well. So it's all tied in together. Ocean flows, this kind of stuff. So it becomes a lot wetter in East Africa. Climate change makes weather, more intense. It gets warm. The air is warmer, can hold more water. So when it falls down, there's just a lot more water.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot in East Africa, a lot of floods, droughts as well, but these floods are getting heavier and heavier. Um, and that in itself is maybe not so special, but Africa just has a situation where they're not financially prepared to deal with this. Like, for instance, Malawi recently calculated that in the last 8 years, they lost $2 billion in just natural disasters, so droughts and
Really?
floods, and they just do not
That's
have a lot of money,
a lot of
and
money.
and especially for a country with such
Yeah,
a small
small
GDP.
economy. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, and so they're just not prepared for it financially. They're not as insured as we are. Neither the state nor the people living in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a lot more difficult for them to deal with the consequences. And then you always have this thing that kind of rubs the wrong way always, is that they didn't cause it, right? Like they are not the ones who put the CO2 and the methane and whatever in the atmosphere, or at least not by the numbers we did. So it's just it's an interesting situation. It's unfolding. I think climate change is one of the most interesting situations anywhere, but also in East Africa.
Mm-hmm. Simon, thanks so much for everything. Yeah, amazing journalist,
Thanks.
young guy, and you've already done quite a lot.
We
And
tried.
being the first person to do things as well, which is really cool. So yeah, thanks for chatting. And yeah, where can people see your stuff, follow you?
Follow my LinkedIn, follow my Substack.
Which is?
I don't know. If you look in my name, look up my name, Simon Vera. You'll
I'll
find
put
it.
it on the screen.
Yeah, so put it there.
Just in the middle.
And I post most of my stories on there, so you can read them up.
Cool. Cheers, man. Thanks so much.